This is the Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Brueski.
Featuring defense attorney, Hidden Killers daily contributor, and host of the Defense Diaries podcast, Bob Motta.
It's horrific to think, and I think something that shocks most parents, that this could even happen, that you could have no judge, no jury. You can just have one social worker make these sort of broad judgments and assumptions about a family, and especially when you have a family that knows their daughter, that has extensive stories of how they've been trying to treat her and help her for many years. This wasn't just, she's been in the back corner of the trailer for the last 5 years. We decided to bring her in. It's not this at all. It's just something that they weren't caring about her, didn't love their daughter. In the fact that quickly you can have your child taken away from you with no evidence, no proof. That doesn't seem even like a possibility or a thing, but in reality, it really
very much is.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a terrifying concept, man. I think that this trial is going to result in that entire system being put on trial.
Yeah,
because this cannot happen. They cannot. Once you get sucked into that system, and whether it's like what we call DCFS or DCF, what they call it down there, whatever the case may be, every state has it, some kind of child protective services. When you get sucked into that system, you are stripped of everything in terms of your guardianship over your own kid, man. And it's scary, especially like you said, when it's left to one or two people and their misjudgments about things. Because like she was treated at like Nemours Children's Hospital, which is a super reputable hospital prior to, you know what I mean? And it's like, that's who discovered the disorder. That's who ordered the dosage amount of the ketamine. And you've got a mother who's a nurse, who's screaming and yelling, and the feeling that this social worker is getting from the mother, instead of being like, wow, she really cares and she's really obviously super involved with this child and she's a great mom, and instead goes the other way with it and finds that she's shady and thinks that, like, she literally goes to the Munchausen by proxy, that thing where mothers sometimes will purposefully keep their kids sick because they want to care for them.
And make it on a very snap judgment as well, which is like that's
completely.
And I believe the DSM doesn't even recognize it as a disorder anymore. But then and you can't just diagnose that after meeting a mom for 10 minutes either.
And she's not a doctor.
She is
not like, I have a sociology degree. I was a social worker for 5 years prior to becoming a lawyer. I wasn't diagnosing anything, Tony.
Sure.
You know what I mean? That was not my role. I did not go to medical school. I did not have a degree in psychology. None of those things were in my purview as a social worker, and they aren't in hers. So, man, like that case is a stunner. And I hope what results from it is, aside from I hope the plaintiff prevails. I hope Maya and her father prevail financially, but I hope that change is effectuated based on that case when you take a hard look at how that all went down and the issues that exist within the system, because they have to be addressed.
I mean, this was
what the answers are. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's above my pay grade, and that's not my field, but I can tell you there's issues, because if this can happen to the extent where a mother feels so frustrated and so horrified about what's going on that she ends her own life.
Yeah.
I mean, man, it's a bridge too far.
Well, and the fact that we've
much power.
We've learned that Dr. Sally Smith, who has since retired and who has since settled with the family, this was a pattern. This was not the only family that had these sort of things happening to them under the purview of Dr. Sally Smith. She even wrote a letter to one of the families after she essentially destroyed the family. Some very narcissistic, half-assed apology, I guess is what I would call it. I've been doing this for so long. I've been doing it for, I think, 30 years, if I'm correct, more than 3,000 cases. And if, a couple of them, slipped through the cracks, I'm sorry. Maybe I should have been a little more vigilant. And I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what the letter said. I mean, this feels like someone's ego that got completely out of control. There was no oversight. There was no checks and balances. And she was able to do this for so many years. Granted, yes, this is all civil, but some of these things that we're hearing coming out sound very criminal. But is there any sort of repercussions, or is there any sort of path for criminal charges against any of those involved in this? Or are they protected because it was a medical system and all the paperwork and all of the agreements that are signed as to I'm not going to sue you were in place?
Yeah, I mean, somewhat. I mean, liability waivers only go so far, though, when it goes to straight up negligence or recklessness. You know what I'm saying? So it's like those things are not bulletproof. But I mean, it's a scary case above beyond everything. It just is because of that loss of control. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And it's like there is no remedy.
Yeah.
Like the courts will not intervene with or DCFS or whatever they call DCF or DC, whatever it's called there.
DC Comics is kind of what it seems like it was run by.
Yeah, I mean, it really is, man. And it's like when you lose control of your kids. And look, I mean, are there occasions, of course, where they're doing what they need to do, where there's abuse of parents? Yes, that's why we need it. But figuring out what's founded and what's unfounded is the key here. And having levels of people that are watching what one another are doing and making sure that the information's being vetted, that has to occur, because that clearly did not occur here. Like, even to go so far as to say that it didn't occur with them looking at the medical records from the other provider.
Yeah.
I mean, like, how can one doctor decide, well, okay, I disagree with this other doctor? That's fine. Doctors can have a difference of opinions. But when it gets to the point where they're putting off onto Beata, the mother, the fact that she says that they're giving the wrong doses, she's pounding her fist on the table, you're not giving her the right dosage, and then putting that on her instead of going and looking and see, okay, well, yeah, another doctor did subscribe or prescribe that amount. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know, man. Like, it's an interesting case, and it goes to a lot of different things, in terms of, but to me, the entire system's on trial as much as anything else.
And it should be. I mean, so often we hear the exact opposite about Child Protective Services, or whatever it's called locally, of not doing the job adequately. And quite often just because of not enough staff, not enough funding, not enough resources. And then children slip through the cracks and end up being murdered, or something horrible happens to them because of the lack of the oversight there. This is the exact opposite, where the system just went off the rails in the other direction. I've yet to hear, I think, a good story about CPS or whatever it's called there. In almost any case, it's always way off the rails. And we've been screaming this for years, that the system is broken and needs help. And I'm wondering if this way, even though it went the exact opposite direction than it normally does, if this will actually inspire any sort of change into that system. And like you said, I don't have the answers either. I have no idea what the solution is, other than competency needs to be the priority.
100%. I mean, and that's it. I mean, there's nothing I need to say beyond that. That's it. Competency, and there has to be accountability. Those two things. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, without accountability, I mean, like anything, you want a system of checks and balances. You need multiple eyes on things like this. You can't leave all that power in one person's hands. And ultimately, to me, that social worker was the one that was steering this ship.
Yep.
And she was so misguided about what she thought that no one was changing her mind about anything. And it got to the extent where, I mean, she's got two separate entities, that being risk management at the hospital, based on her recommendations. And I don't care what she says. She was the one. Doctors do rounds and they pop in for a minute or two. Mm-hmm. The nurses and the social workers are the ones that are constantly coming into that room and talking to the patients and talking to the parents. Those are the people that are the boots on the ground. So, when she's going to risk management and DCF and giving them bad intel, and they're basing their recommendations and their mandates on what she's saying, it's a problem. And it's a problem that's got to be addressed. And it's got to be addressed through the legislature. That's where it has to happen. There has to be new law written about it on how to handle this kind of stuff. So I fully expect that's going to happen.
Want to listen ad-free? Want advanced access to all of our interviews before anyone else?
Become a True Crime Today Premium Plus subscriber on Apple Podcasts.
You get every episode commercial free.
So you can binge on true crime
until you can binge no more.
Search True Crime Today Premium Plus on Apple Podcasts now, or go to our podcast page and sign up now.
More of the Hidden Killers podcast next.